Welcome to The Global Girlfriend.
Shall we book a trip to Athens, Greece?
Yep. All right, everybody, welcome back to The Global Girlfriend. We are a podcast for women who live abroad or travel extensively, and we are so glad that you have decided to join us. This week, we have a super exciting episode featuring a guest who has run all over the world. This week, we have Alli Denson with us. Alli is an international teacher and also an international marathoner, half marathoner, triathlete, ultra marathoner. She has literally run all over the world, and we are so excited to have her. She is an incredible goal setter, so she's going to tell us a little bit about her life, her experiences, and the goals that she's working on. So welcome, Alli.
Yay, thank you. I am so excited to be here.
Why don't
Oh,
we get started?
Yes.
Maybe you can tell us, how did you come to live abroad and how did you come to run abroad?
Oof. The live abroad came about because, this is no surprise to anybody, but working and teaching in the U.S. Didn't afford me the opportunities to run the races I wanted to run, compete in the locations I wanted to compete, and an opportunity arose. And my husband, then boyfriend, now husband, and I decided we were going to look at other options. And we had some friends that had been working with us in Arizona and had since moved abroad. And so we contacted them and said, hey, what's this like? What can we do? And before we knew it, 3 countries later, 12 years later, here we are in Bali, Indonesia.
Amazing. And where have you lived?
We
good
lived.
question.
Our first overseas post was in Quito, Ecuador, and we were there for 4 years. And second post was Shenzhen, China, and we were there for 6 years. And some of those years were during COVID, which good, bad, interesting, all of the above, led us to find a different lifestyle, different pace of life, and chose to move to Bali, where I met the amazing Brianna.
And I am so
love that.
glad that the universe brought us together. So you have lived abroad. I think you've been an educator and you've been a runner for a long time. How do you connect living abroad with running? What has that been like for you?
And that's been really interesting because one of the things that I wanted when I was in the U.S., a lot of my identity was wrapped in racing. And I started out as a runner, and then I went runner turned triathlete / still runner. But a lot of my friends, a lot of my gatherings, a lot of my interactions with people were based around my running and my training. And so my identity was also wrapped in that. And I was very excited once I moved abroad that I was going to be able to be Alli. I was going to be able to be the educator. I was going to be able to be the friend. I was going to be able to be the partner. And not only have people ask me, oh, what was your time on this? How was this race? Oh, you didn't do as well as you wanted. Oh my God, I saw you got the podium. So that was the conversations that were happening. And so when I moved, I was like, oh, I'm so excited. This is not going to be the only thing that people know about me. And while that was true, there was a giant chunk of me that was missing. So then I was like, all right, I started signing up for races in Ecuador. And then I just realized like that was such a big part of me. I couldn't remove that identity and still be me. While it wasn't the only thing anymore, which was like half the goal was to not have that be the only thing people recognized about me.
Yeah.
I still got to do the thing that made me thrive and made me who I was. So just started looking. There's world race calendars. There are local running clubs. You go for a run on any street in any country, and you're going to see a group of people running. And so if you're so bold, you can rock up to them and say, hey, like, can I join you? Or is there a local group that meets? Can I be a part of this? And so every place I go now, I look on Instagram. I do Google searches for running clubs in the area.
That's awesome. And we've talked about that on previous episodes as well. Like if you have a passion and you live abroad, 9 out of 10 times, there's people who have that passion with you. So you have lived right now, you're living at sea level. You've lived in the mountains of Ecuador. 2 weeks ago, Alli ran an ultra marathon, 62 kilometers up a mountain here in Bali. Can you tell us a little bit about how the places that you have lived have
Oof.
influenced the style of running that you do?
Absolutely. When I was living in the U.S., I was not at sea level, but I was at like 2,000 feet, something like that. So I was relatively stable and even, and I was used to that because I'd been running there for years. And then I moved to Ecuador, and I was at like 4,000 plus meters, 9,000 feet, and I was like, okay, this is going to be really different. And so I had to check my ego massively, because I obviously couldn't keep the same pace and the same distance for the same amount of time, living at that type of elevation. So I think the biggest change for me was I had to learn how. It was humbling. I had to learn how to like I said, check the ego and work with the different conditions I was living. The fun part was, as soon as I went to sea level after living in Ecuador, I was like, whoa, there is something to be said for altitude training. And that was amazing. And then I lost the altitude and gained the heat and humidity when I moved to Shenzhen, China, and again had to adapt to a whole different animal. Like the heat and humidity was something. Heat was what I was used to in the desert of Arizona, but not the humidity. That's something different. And had to get over the disappointment of not being able to hold times and paces that I thought I should be able to hold, and learning that my body sweats more than, I don't know, more than your average female, maybe not, but I sweat more than I was giving myself credit for. And so I had to really work on new hydration and nutrition strategies, because in those elements, I couldn't take in as much food as I had been taking in before. I couldn't take in the same types of foods when I was running, but I could take in more fluids. So I had to learn how to, like, my body to adapt to taking in that much in terms of fluid, and learning how not to dehydrate myself, because that was a massive factor. And I didn't change much when I went from that humidity of China to Bali, except it just got worse.
Yeah.
So now it's an even more important factor for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it's cool to hear, because with traveling and living abroad, there comes with so many opportunities of adapting, and I like to hear how even across running and sport, there's just so much adapting based on where you're at.
100%.
So yeah. Okay, so traveling for sport. Do you want to share some of your favorite places, countries, or cities that you've run in, and why they're your favorite?
Yes, gosh. Let's see. Okay, so I think one of my more memorable races was so I did 2 back-to-back races in the US that were in former Olympic villages. And so that was really neat. The first one was a trail race in Squaw Valley, which was Winter Olympic location, and so we started in the Olympic Village, and then ended 100 miles away. We'll get into that later. And then 4 weeks later, I did my first Ironman in Lake Placid, which was also the site for the Olympics. And so again, we started in the Olympic Village, and it's all of the, obviously not to the same extent, but it's still like there's still signs posted and the Olympic rings posted, and so it kind of felt like, I don't know, it felt really special.
Yeah.
And then the other really special place that I ran was Tokyo, and there was a very meaningful. This was the Tokyo Marathon in 2024, and it was a really meaningful race for me. I was supposed to run it in 2020 and then COVID. And then I was supposed to run it in 2021 and then COVID and being stuck in China. And then 2022 and COVID being stuck in China. And then, so it was I just kept deferring and deferring and deferring. And so finally in 2024, all the stars aligned, and I had been able to defer one last time. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do Tokyo. I'm living in Asia. I can easily get there, which, that's debatable. But and so yeah, it was just a really memorable race and place, and yeah.
Oh, those sound amazing. That sounds amazing. So what was it about the Tokyo one that made it just one of the most memorable ones? Well, aside from you having to wait for so long for it finally to come about.
Yeah. The location was really interesting. And I don't know if you've been to Japan. It is a very organized, very regimented.
Oh, that's nice.
Place. And I don't know if you know anything about marathoning, but it is not organized in terms of like what your body goes through. And there's a lot of stuff that happens, right? And so it was just kind of this like contradiction. You have this very orderly, very neat, very prescribed place where you're running, and then you have the chaos of like thousands of runners running through, grabbing bottles, slipping on wet ground, and the chaos of like, oh, I don't feel good, oh my god, I feel amazing, just like in the backdrop of this like neat, orderly situation. And the crowds were great, and then you had dancers and drummers, and
cool.
Yeah, it was fantastic in terms of the support that was out there.
Oh, that sounds amazing, and just great energy. Yeah,
for sure.
So you have run all around the world. Like, you've been all around the world for running. Is there a difference running in Europe versus running in Asia versus running in South America? Like, obviously the climate is different, but in terms of like the crowds, in terms of how races are organized and run, like, what have you noticed in terms of those differences?
You'd think that there would be a big difference in different countries, but we're all kind of cut from the same cloth. Like, if you're a marathoner, if you're an ultra marathoner, regardless where you're from, you're cut from the same cloth. So you have the same idiosyncrasies, you have the same passions, you have the same drives, you have the same needs, you have the same desires. And so all of the expos where you go pick up your race packets, while they vary in terms of organization, the feeling is the same.
Okay.
You might have a few different products along the way on the course, but when you're at these expos, everybody still needs shoes, everybody still needs nutrition, everybody still needs you still have these companies who are trying to get into the market, who are pimping out their product, whether it's a new beach shot or a new like cream for your muscles if you're cramping. They're still there. They might have a different name, a different brand, a different language on the package, but it's still going to be the same. The biggest difference for me, in Asia versus Ecuador versus US versus Europe, were the strange fueling stations on the race. There were some. I loved being in Tokyo, but there were some weird, to me, weird.
Yeah.
You know, I hold no judgment, but didn't sit well with me. Things that they offered on the course for participants to nibble on. Some of them were gelatinous, weird, colorful things that I
Okay.
can't describe. And then, yeah, and then in Ecuador, it was pretty typical, bars and gels and fruit. Europe is very similar to the U.S. in terms of the products that they use.
Yeah.
It's going to be very industry standard.
Okay. Do you have any like fun or unexpected moments from your races abroad?
Yes. So this last race I did in London, I was off by myself. It didn't make sense to bring my husband. It was too much time away, not enough, to justify like him not getting paid and having two of us away. Um, and I was meeting some friends who I'd worked with in China who had since moved to Romania, and they were flying in and meeting me in London. So that was going to be wonderful right there. And then I show up at the hotel after like 36 hours of traveling. I'm exhausted, and I am about to check in, and I see this face, and I'm like, Nicole? And she looks up, and it's my sister who lives in San Francisco. And I was in a different place. I was tired. Change of context, change of location. I was just like, is it like am I seeing things? I was so totally confused. And my sister and my husband and my two friends had been planning for months to surprise me
Oh.
to show up in London. And so that was probably the biggest surprise that I had. And it was just to have that support there. And
Mhm.
then one of the women is not a runner, not at all. She loves me, and she wanted to be there to support me.
Oh.
And she said, even being a non-runner, this was one of the most amazing experiences for her. It like restored her faith in humanity. There were people just out there, like didn't have a runner in the race, just out there cheering for people. And just to see the like massive crowds that gathered, that were giving out candy, that were like had their garden hoses, like hosing people down for the heat.
Mhm.
And she's like, they were just out there yelling because you can have your name written on your bib. And they're just yelling for Johnny and Susan, and yeah, you're looking really good, way to go. Having no reason to be out there except for just to help people along and to be better. So she's like, this was the most amazing restorative experience. So obviously it's my passion, so it makes me happy when other people also find like pleasure in some aspect of what I do.
That is
Oh, yeah.
so that is so beautiful. And I found I
Yeah.
ran so I literally cannot compare with what Allie has accomplished. I ran one marathon slowly a few years ago. um, but I did the Athens marathon, and I felt the same way, like just about the sense of community. Like when we started the race, it was so beautiful. There was all these like, because you kind of start the race in this smaller town marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of these local kids had pulled little like olive branches off the olive trees because that's like what they used to give to the Olympians. And so you're like running and the kids are handing out olive branches to the runners, and I held on to my little olive branch for the whole race. And like it was just so beautiful. There was like people doing traditional dances like every couple of kilometers, and like live bands playing, and literally people, because you kind of like run through smaller towns, like just like, you know, a bunch of old people who are coming out like yelling like let's go in Greek at you like the whole way. Like it's just such a beautiful uniting experience, and it's so nice to hear that it's the same way all over the world.
It is, yes. And then and it happens more in ultras that run through little villages, but two, it happened a lot in London. Kids line the streets also, and so they put their hand out for you to high five. And I mean, unless you are like competing for money and are going to like get first place, like you should stop and give. You don't even stop, you just move over and you run by and you give like a
Mm-hmm.
line of high fives along the way. It makes you feel better, it makes the kids happy.
Makes everyone feel good.
Yes.
Cute.
Oh, that's all. I love these stories. And I love events or just shared moments that can bring people together. And I feel like running and marathons is one of those things. So special. So special to hear that. Okay, we love beautiful moments, but obviously we know that there are definitely some challenges that you're faced with. So are any coming to mind, any injuries or setbacks that you've experienced through all of your experience with running?
Knock on wood. I have been
Oh, yes.
incredibly fortunate to have sustained minimal injury. There
Oh,
have
great.
been, there was one that it's an overuse thing. It happens. It's just part of life, and this happened the marathon. My last marathon in the U.S. before moving to Ecuador. I was running the San Francisco Marathon with my sister, and I had posterior tibial tendonitis, which still plagues me on and off. But it was my first experience with it, and it was quite bad. So I was doing a lot of physical therapy, and I was doing a lot of pool running. And I grimace when I say that, because literally when you're going and you're running 4 hours outside, you cover a lot of ground. When you're running 4 hours in a pool, you see the same damn thing for every second of that 4 hours. And you wear like a little, it's a belt. They call it a belt because it's around your waist, but it's like a floating device. And literally, you go through the running motions, and you go nowhere up and down the pool, but you're not swimming, so it's a very, very slow, painful in more than one way experience. To just pool running is very slow. So that was probably the biggest setback
Mm-hmm.
and difficulty. Ran the race, haven't really had a problem since. I mean, like I said,
Good.
off and on.
Good.
So I'll tape my ankle every once in a while. Like I ran the last race I had with my ankle taped just out of more mental support than physical
Mm-hmm.
need. And it's gonna be a matter of strengthening other areas of my leg to support that tendon that's been used too much. But in terms of like major setbacks, not really. Like that was probably the biggest injury I've had, and there were ways around it. I've never had to forfeit a race again. Never had to forfeit a race due to an injury
Oh,
or
good.
an illness. I'm a pretty solid girl, and so my body can withstand quite a bit. And
Mm-hmm.
more than that, I think I'm pretty damn stubborn. So even if I should have not competed in a race or
You're
taken some
like,
time off of training, I was like, nope, not going to happen. So
okay.
there's that.
Well, that's amazing. What about with jet lag? Has that do you also just kind of power through that? Or what's that
Yeah.
like running after traveling for so long?
I mean, I'm sure it's not ideal, but I don't know. I don't struggle with jet lag like some people do. I mean, I can feel it. I'm tired, but I
Yeah.
try to get there enough days in advance that like I can get a few solid nights of sleep before I have to do the event.
Oh, that's smart. Okay. That's great. So what's it like balancing, your international teaching career, but also training for these marathons and different races?
Oh, how long do we have? Do we have a couple hours? Um,
We've got all the time.
it's you really have to elicit the support of the people around you, and I have an incredibly supportive partner who wants to see me succeed and loves my lofty goals at the same time as he hates my lofty goals because it does take me away. He does love and appreciate that aspect of me and knows that that's what he married into. That, unfortunately, like, that's who I am, and I do these things, and he does support that. And he'll make me a cup of, he don't make water, but he'll leave me a cup of water out every morning because he knows my biggest struggle is hydration. And so, like, there's a cup of water sitting by the coffee pot every morning with either a little
Oh.
note or a conversation card to answer. So, like, the little things like that make it easy.
Hmm.
Knowing that I can share my passion and my running with the students that I teach and the other teachers that are around me, is also a bonus. We can kind of tie them together. Like, we have a running group that meets Tuesdays and Thursdays after school. And so we did that because we needed to go for runs. And so we're like, okay, I'm sure there's other people in the school that like to run. Let's put together this group. And when I'm coaching cross country with the students, I look at what my workout is. I'm like, okay, how can I tailor this to fit them and still get my workout in at the same time? And so, the kids love it because they're like, oh my God, we're doing the same workout as Miss Denson. So it's like
Oh, yeah.
they get a kick out of the fact that they are doing the same thing that I'm doing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's really cool to share that with them, for sure.
And I just want to give Alli a huge shout out because I feel like you've been very modest about two things on this podcast so far. The first thing you've been very modest about is you make it sound so easy, which I think is amazing because I know that it's not easy. But because I work with Alli will leave work on Thursday and fly to London and run a marathon and fly back on Monday, like from Asia. Uh, so like that is, you're so just committed to your goals and you really make them happen. And I think that is a beautiful thing. And the other thing that really inspires me about you, Alli, is just the sense of community that you've been able to create with running everywhere you go. So recently, I mentioned that you organized a group of runners from Bali to do the ultra race, and Alli started the run group. And in that run group, there's people like there's students, there's teachers, there's community members from Canada and America and Indonesia and Australia and Korea, and like it was a beautiful international group of runners that you got together. And because you're so passionate about it, like Alli created training plans for everybody and kept everybody motivated. And so it's just really wonderful that you've been able to create such a beautiful international community through your passion. And I feel like we have a lot to learn from you. So you're working on a pretty big goal right now. Can you tell us what your big goal that you're working towards is?
There is a group of marathons called the Abbott World Majors, and Abbott is the parent company, and then the World Majors are the races that are. There's 3 in the U.S. and then there's 4 outside of the U.S. And so Boston, Chicago, New York are the 3 US, and then you have Tokyo, Berlin, London, and then they've since added Sydney as their 7th major. And for whatever reason, these races have become these iconic world races. And when I Boston is notoriously difficult to get into. And I ran Boston in 2011, I believe. And my sister and I ran it together, and some friends of ours also ran, and so we had a group of us that went. But it was one of those like, hey, let's try to get into Boston. And it's like you have to hit these qualifying times, and then you have to hit the lottery at the right time, and you have to sign up at the right time, and it's like this massive like mad rush to try to get on the computer. And like you'd fill out the form and it would shoot back because it was the service was busy, and then you'd fill it out again. And so I had me on it, my mom on it. We had our aunt and uncle trying to fill in for my sister and me to get into Boston. And so we're like, yeah, Boston. And then never didn't think much of it because we'd run it and we'd been there, done that. And my sister ran it a couple times, but I was like, all right, I did the thing. I did the thing. That was good.
Nice.
And then when I was in China, I had a friend that wanted to do the Tokyo Marathon, and she's like, let's sign up. And I happened to get into the lottery, and she did not. And that's when the whole like 4 years in the making happened. But I was like, oh, Tokyo didn't really have the majors like as a thought in my head. And then I get to Tokyo, and a couple of my friends that I used to train with in the US also were there, and this was their 6th. And so then they started talking to me about these world majors and how you could do it. And I was like, that's a really cool goal. I kind of want to do that. And so I started to think about it, and I came home and I told my husband, I was like, I want to do this. And he's like, okay. And I said, but I want to do it one better. And he's like, what does that mean? And I was like, well, I want to do them all before I turn 50. And this is in 2024. So, and I was 48 at the time. I had just turned 48. Yeah, I just turned 48. So I was like, I have like a year or 2 years to do these. And so then 2025 happens, and I started to sign up for these races, and you can go through the lottery, which is not a guaranteed entry, obviously, or you can go through marathon tour companies. And so that's how I was like, okay, if I want to get this goal, I'm going to have to go through these marathon tour companies, because I didn't get into Chicago on my own. I didn't get into Sydney on my own. I didn't get into London on my own. So I was like, all right, I'm going to have to do this. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm going to make my goal. Like, I'm going to do all these 6 majors. And then they added Sydney. So 7 majors before I turned 50. And then I had to like check myself for a second, and I had to look logically. I'm like, okay, so yes, I can do this. I can get these all done before I turn 50, because my birthday's in February. So February 2026, I will turn 50. And so the races would have lined up to be done, except that I would run Chicago in October of 2025.
Yeah.
And then 3 weeks later, have to fly back to the US to run New York. And I was like, okay, yes, could I do that? Sure. Physically, yes. But I had to think about like the responsibility as a human and a teacher. And I was like, it's not physically responsible to do back to back like that. Yeah. With that travel. It's not financially responsible to do back to back with that. Like I couldn't take a month off of work to go stay in the US for that month. Yeah. And then to fly back and forth that many times in that short amount of time was not financially responsible, nor like environmentally responsible to fly back and forth to the US like that so many times. And then, practically I was like, okay, how can I revisit this goal and still make it something that I feel good about and feel comfortable with, yet do the responsible thing and not travel to and from the US twice in 3 weeks. Okay. And so I said, okay, I turned 50, but I will not yet have turned 51. So it's still in my 50th year. And I'm going to take that as a win. So it will be November 2026 that I will run New York. And so that will be my last world major, and I will not yet have turned 51. So within my 50th year, I will have gotten all 7 majors.
That is amazing. That is just so
truly
cool
is.
and so impressive. I also love that it crossed your mind that you were like, can I fly from Asia to the United States twice in 3 weeks? Sure.
Oh, it totally crossed it absolutely crossed my mind. And like, would my partner have supported it? Yes. Would he have thought I was insane? Absolutely.
So, like, I mean, obviously marathons are not for everyone, but we have a lot of women who listen to this podcast who have big goals. They're big dreamers. They don't let geographical boundaries get in their way. But sometimes having goals can be a mental game. And there are things that at times feel impossible, and we have to push through those. So, what encouragement do you have for the people listening to this podcast for how to have the courage to go after huge international goals, whatever those goals are?
Um, I mean, the phrase that I like to use is you can do hard things. So no matter what the goal, there will always be challenges. No matter how little, how big, wherever you are, whether it's to travel or, you know, do something around the house, goals are gonna come with challenges. But I have to remind myself that I am bigger than that challenge, that I am stronger than that challenge, that there will be setbacks, that there will be things that become difficult along the way. But that only makes the accomplishing this challenge more special because you have overcome these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess my biggest piece of advice would be, don't sell yourself short. Like, you are capable, everybody is capable of a lot more than they think and they know. And it's important to remember that life is going to happen, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep going for those goals. They might shift, they might be adaptable, right? They might shift, um, they might be postponed a little bit. The timing might be different. They might look different if like somewhere in that goal you have a child that's going to redirect you. Like for me, like that feasibility of going to the US twice in 3 weeks, I had to adapt that goal, but I still made it a goal that felt good and felt comfortable for me and was still a challenge. So I had to adapt, but at the same time I was like, no, this is something that's important to me. I'm not going to let the fact that I live in Asia and want to travel twice to the US stop me from doing something that is really important to me. So if it's important, you're going to make it work. And if the goal has to be for you. You can't have this goal to do it for somebody else, or you're not going to have that same buy-in. I would have been like, if I don't get it, I don't get it. But because it was a goal for me and it was something that was important for me, I'm going to make sure that it happens and do the hard things necessary to make it happen. But I think, so if I could summarize that and make it succinct, you can do hard things. Don't sell yourself short.
I love it.
Those are good ones.
That is beautiful. So as we sort of wrap up the episode, something that we love to do here on the Global Girlfriend is end episodes with a rapid fire round of questions. So just quick and dirty, the first thing that comes to your mind, your favorite marathon you've ever run.
London. But no, Boston, changing it. Boston.
Okay, love it. Okay, next one is dream race still on the list.
Athens Marathon. I wanna do the original marathon.
I love it. Okay, what is one piece of gear that you will not travel without?
See, I'm gonna say shoes.
Gotta have them.
Yeah, you have to say, you gotta, yeah.
Okay.
Underwear?
Classic. Yes, shoes and undies and you're set. Okay, love this next question. Best post-race meal that you've ever had?
Pancakes.
Pancakes. Say no more.
Amazing. Okay, so Alli,
Love
thank you
that.
so much. Thank you so much for being with us here today. It is so just inspiring to hear your story about how you've managed to live internationally and run literally all around the world. I think you've inspired all of us to maybe set a big lofty goal for ourselves, because you're really proving that you can make it happen. So thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been wonderful having you.
Oh, I feel
Yes.
so honored that you asked me to be a part of your podcast. I'm so excited about this.
Oh my God,
Oh,
thank you so
good.
And
much.
Chiquita has been very happy to be a part of your podcast as well. Hopefully my throwing her little toy has not been too much of a distraction. I'm trying to keep myself still while I'm throwing the little toy.
No, it's all good. And if you're listening to this, we want to hear all about your goals and your dreams. So Morgan, where can people find us on the internet?
Yes. Okay. So you can find us on social media at The Global Girlfriend on Instagram and on TikTok. You can find us on Spotify. Leave a comment there. We'd love to interact with you at The Global Girlfriend. And also feel free to send us an email at theglobalgirlfriend@gmail.com. We would love to connect.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Yep. See you soon. Bye.